You're watching News at Prime. The Democratic Alliance has filed a complaint, it says, with the public protector over the ANC's alleged use of state resources. This is for party election campaigning ahead of the May vote. ANC spokesperson is Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri, who joins us now to respond to the claims by the Democratic Alliance. Ms. Bhengu-Motsiri, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. I want to read a line from that statement of the Democratic Alliance, and they say, I quote now, "At an ANC campaign event on Saturday, Ramaphosa promised the crowd 500,000 skilled training and job opportunities using a taxpayer-funded scheme." How do you respond? Ms. Bhengu-Motsiri, are you able to hear me?
I lost you there a bit, Polly. Good evening. I lost you there a bit, but let's proceed. Let's see.
Okay, all right. I'll repeat again. And this is an extract from a statement of the Democratic Alliance. And they are saying, at an ANC campaign event which was held on Saturday, Ramaphosa promised the crowd 500,000 skilled training and job opportunities using a taxpayer-funded scheme. Did the president make such a promise?
The president did make such a promise, and the president, of course, leads the incumbent government. There's absolutely nothing remiss with that. In fact, I think this knee-jerk reaction by John Steenhuisen is unfounded. There was no sense in which the president articulated that message that suggests that he's going to be using taxpayers' money. The president essentially said, and I was at that event, that when we return to government, we will continue the work we've started before. And let me just historicize this issue, Oli. It is nothing new. The president led an initiative, the Yes Initiative, which to date actually created 1.2 million opportunities, decent work opportunities for young people. I could talk about the expanded public works programs. I could talk about the UIF program that has actually been not spoken so well about or not so frankly about, which has always been in the offing and ran into glitches which were solved with previous service providers and the upskilling of young people. So it's a basket of interventions to address the youth unemployment challenge in our country. There's absolutely nothing new about what the president has spoken about. But it also is quite mind-boggling, this rush to the public protector, and of course they're well within their rights to do so. It's mind-boggling given the fact that as I was just walking into the office this afternoon, I overheard the Gordon Lewis Hill making that very same commitment, talking about 2.3 million jobs that are going to be created to create unemployment. Now, the question is, simply because it's an election year, should the president keep quiet about the work of government and the work that is still steaming ahead in full swing? And secondly, we're not going to be going to the public protector to go and report Gordon Lewis Hill over the pledges he made as part of pushing the ANC, the DA, manifesto. Nobody's going to do that because we understand that parties have made pledges in their own manifestos. But we are the only ones that have a record in government. We're the only ones that have implemented these programs, and we are saying that we're going to accelerate them.
All right. So, Ms. Bhengu-Motsiri, I don't for a second speak for the Democratic Alliance, but my sense is that what they are unhappy about is that these are taxpayer-funded schemes. They also make reference to the Nasispani initiative, and they're saying that in Gauteng, the ANC has been using that in order to campaign, and so for them, this is an unfair practice because you are a party in government and these programs are government driven, but here you are using them at your election campaigns. Is that something that perhaps is not amiss for you, or nothing wrong really with that?
Certainly the ANC wouldn't see anything wrong with the fact that the work of government needs to proceed uninterrupted, even during an election year. I've never seen it anywhere in any democracy that an incumbent government can't speak about successes or its plans. It's just unbelievable that we have opposition parties that are actually reasoning at that level.
Yeah.
And I think it's a serious conceptual challenge. And I don't even think it's a conceptual challenge. I think it's just, an opposition party that has lost ideas, whose campaign has collapsed, who are defocused and are focusing on the ANC's manifesto. Everybody's talking about the ANC's manifesto. We are struggling to hear about what opposition parties are going to be doing in concrete terms. It is always about the ANC. But as I said, the public protector is that institution that is meant to protect the public. So they can go ahead and do that. We will answer those questions. We don't see anything unethical about the president of the country being asked about the employment by members of the media, particularly youth unemployment where we were, which was Cosmo City, and responding to what it is that government has done and what government aims to do.
Yeah.
And I still say that I think we're dealing with a DA that has lost focus, that has lost the plot. Let's turn our shine a spotlight on what's going on in the Western Cape. What is the record of the DA in terms of creating jobs in the Western Cape, particularly for the colored communities and Africans? How many black and African senior managers do you have in the office of the Premier? You have 2 out of 65. So you go and really figure out these things for yourselves, colleagues, and your audience, colleague.
All right. Let me sway your attention to a previous complaint, and this one may not necessarily have been channeled to the Public Protector's Office, but it certainly made headlines when there was a complaint about the president using state resources to travel from a government event to an ANC event. And perhaps in this period, that particular accusation may come up again to say ministers are using government vehicles, including the security services, in order to travel around the country using taxpayer-funded resources to campaign in ANC or for the ANC. How do you plan to respond to that, should it come up again?
Well, there are 2 levels at which we could respond to that. And I think right-thinking people would know that there are ministerial handbooks, there are security details that have got to be around the president by virtue of him being the head of state. I've never heard of anything in any country where there is an election campaign that is being contested in the United Kingdom and suddenly the Prime Minister must get on a bicycle or get on a car. I've never heard of anything like that. These things are regulated, and they are regulated in understanding of good practice as far as that is concerned. More often than not, in any case, which is the second part of my response, more often than any case, there's always government programs wherever the president goes because of his tight schedule. It's not as if he's always going on ANC programs, and similarly with public deployees in the form of ministers. But we are happy as the ANC to be answerable to the people of South Africa about this matter as to how we deal with these things during an election year. It cannot be that during an election year, public deployees suddenly must forgo the existing regulations that are well documented, that are audited by our audit assurance institutions in the country. Again, I think it's a silly accusation. We are also campaigning. We've got a right to be campaigning. And those that must be part of our campaign trail are either deployed in government or are deployed elsewhere outside of the state institutions.
I still, though, Ms. Bhengu-Motsiri, fail to make the connection between government work and ANC work. In fact, it's the ANC itself that will constantly raise this, that we do not want to blur the lines. And so, is that not the blurring of the lines? Let's use perhaps a fresh example. Minister Newzroom Afrika was involved in an accident recently, and thank goodness he was not hurt. The people that were transporting him, including the vehicles that he was traveling in, those were government vehicles, unless, of course, you'll tell me different. But he was in the Northwest to do ANC work. And so how do you separate, at which point do you separate the line between party and state?
In fact, I mean, the other way of looking at it is that if anything fatal would have happened against Newzroom Afrika, the criticism from many opiners in our country would have been, why were there no necessary protections in line with his responsibilities as the Minister of State? That's another way of also having a look at it. I really do think that here it's really a thing of clutching at straws. I know that the DA, of course, is quite active in the courts. We are equally active in the courts. So if we must challenge anything that gets raised or any public narrative, we're more than happy to do so. I still say that public employees have got a right to what the benefits accorded to them by virtue of being ministers of state, officials of the state, and they need to be protected and supported in that regard. Up until a time, South Africans want, and through a public participation process, not through a DA court process, want to review those benefits that must accrue to anyone that gets appointed as an official of the state in the form of a minister.
All right.
Secondly,
please go ahead.
I think that there is a lot of deflection of attention on the conduct of the DA, particularly in the Western Cape. We are still waiting for the deployment records. We are focusing on the ministers of the ANC now, but we are still waiting for the provision of the deployment records by the DA, having sent Leon Schreiber to obtain the records of the ANC, which we duly provided, and we won that court challenge. But we went to court via one of our members who, out of his own volition, asked for their records. To this day, we don't have. But what we do know is that you only have 2 Africans out of 65 in the office of the Premier. What we also know is that the Western Cape is pursuing the Western Cape Powers Bill in order to secede from South Africa, including insisting on having power over an international relations policy, effectively wanting to make the Western Cape a republic of its own. We also know that there is lack of employment opportunities, particularly jobs for PALs, by the way, because in the absence of providing deployment records, we are left guessing. And we know that there are jobs for PALs in the Western Cape which deny colored people and Africans who are qualified access to senior management roles in the provincial government. So if we must have a debate, a real debate and a discussion with our colleagues in the DA, I'm more than happy for us to come back for that kind of conversation. But the idea of wanting to, in a linear manner, focus on the matter of the utterances by the president when he has all the rights whilst he's here in South Africa, whilst he is still in government and the president of South Africa, not just the president of the ANC, him being denied to open his mouth, that is not going to be correct.
Well, you now raise an issue that perhaps I should latch on to, and that is that of what you say is the DA wanting to secede the Western Cape from the rest of the Republic. The Bantu Batu Congress, it's the ABC party in KZN. It does appear to be calling for a similar stance. Is that a party you wish to cooperate with going into the future? Because its leader, not so long ago, was the deputy mayor of eThekwini municipality, which is run in coalition, of course, and is led, perhaps I should say, by the ANC?
Well, Kole, I think our stance is very clear that the ANC is working for an outright win. And we are not entertaining any form of cooperation or coalition at this point in time. We are looking to win so that we're able to continue with the transformation journey that was started in 1994. Sure, there have been challenges along the way, but we have a story to tell. And I think the census data from 2022 census data is your science, is your evidence, is your data that we all have to rely on. It can't be my opinion alone. We have to test it against reports that come from legitimate institutions. So we're not really even entertaining the idea of the ABC party or any other party for that matter.
All right. Final question to you. You would have heard yesterday that former President Jacob Zuma is now officially the face of the MK party, and yet he has not renounced his ANC membership. How do you deal with that?
I hope you can still hear me, Kole.
I can.
If I may go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead. Have you gotten my question?
Yes. We all know that Mr. Zuma has been suspended from the ANC owing to him violating several sections of the ANC's constitution. And that is where things are at. The National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC is seized with this matter. And there's basically not much to say about that. We've restated this point repeatedly.
All right. Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri is the spokesperson for the African National Congress. Thank you very much for your time. Still to come. Thank you very much. Still to come on News at Prime. We'll bring you more of our leading top stories in a moment.